Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Black Circle podcast. I have Arda Awais today. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
And again, it's also another conversation that I've been really looking forward to. I just want to kind of like skim off your resume a little bit. You're an award-winning, multidisciplinary designer and creative technologist.
Yes.
And where does the story start with you for this?
It's always kind of strange when you hear people say award-winning and like, oh, that's in my bio. Like, oh, I actually have awards.
Yes, yeah. Pick up the awards. We have to.
I tend to forget about it quite often because you just kind of like go back to your day-to-day life. So for me, I've been working in the creative industry for like 6 coming up to 7 years. I started off very much like as a creative engineer. So my background is in design engineering and I studied design engineering at university. Left university, was working in innovation for a little bit. And it was really fun. I got to really do like speculative designs and speculative feature and really get to like look at prototyping and building like, you know, tangible things that also have hardware, not just on your screen. But I found that a lot of creative engineering roles were very much, you know, you sit on the computer and you do 3D modeling. It wasn't really like the innovation that I experienced in my studying or even like the first jobs I was really lucky to get. And honestly, I think I then transitioned into digital design. So that's where the multidisciplinary comes from because I have a background in design engineering and things like that, but then I transitioned to digital design and I had to learn like a lot more like how do you design user interfaces and how do you design for web and app and how do you create like immersive experiences and things like that. So I tend to be able to work in different types of design and creative mediums, which I enjoy. And that's also kind of like where the creative technology comes from. I tend to blend kind of like code and art with my work and seeing like how can I utilize, you know, technology to create immersive and unique or magical experiences.
Magical experiences. I like that. And we're going to dig into some of the experiences that you brought to life through your work. So what is a creative technologist and how does the world of tech and creative marry?
Yeah. So to be honest, the term creative technologist, I personally never knew about it until I adopted that term. So I used to just be like, I'm a designer and that's about it. But I used to, you know, work with like generative art and creative coding a lot in the work that I did. And I was also kind of doing this in my spare time because I was working as a UX UI designer full time. But I really missed that space of innovation and creativity. So I used to kind of work on projects on my own, and somebody that I met at one of my first jobs who ended up being like a really great mentor for me, he basically was like, you're a creative technologist. I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And I started researching into it, and it's really just about like, as a creative person, there's like different things you can do. So you can be in pottery, you can be in illustration, you can be in graphic design, but creative technologist is kind of like utilizing, you know, technological tools to enhance your work. Right. So it could be, you know, adding animation to an illustration. It could be developing a chatbot that like lets people play around with like gaming and things like that. It's really around like, you know, how can you enhance the work that you've created? Like I did a way back when, from a very long time ago, but developed like a toy for blind children, and it was around like musical play and play for exploration and play for fun and not play for learning. Right. Because often children who are, you know, have missing a sense or maybe not as able-bodied, all of their toys are really geared to getting them to learn and getting them to like be on the same trajectory as somebody who can see or somebody who can hear or somebody who's maybe more able-bodied than them, which is really unfair because their trajectory of learning is going to be different naturally, and doesn't mean that they're behind. It's just that's going to be their path. So when I was exploring how to make this toy, I ended up using like this paint that when you touch, you can code it to do like make sounds or play something. Wow. So the toy was very much a touch toy, and I learned a lot about Braille when I did that project as well. And I ended up coding the toy to basically when the blind child would wear like some different attachments like rings, and it would detect which ring they're wearing, so when they touch the board it would start playing a different tune.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm using technology to enhance that work now, and that's really what creative technologist does.
Yeah, I think we kind of sometimes forget about, when you're saying about the kids and who are not always able-bodied, we leave out the joy.
Yes, and I found that like I did like maybe 6 months of research, 7 months of research when I was figuring out, what to do, what's my concept going to be. And I found a lot of these toys were really just like education, like getting them back into the same trajectory. And I found that like, this is unfair because, what if, they just want to draw something, or they want to just like listen to something. Like able-bodied kids get to have just a painting session and they make this really ugly brown color and everyone's like, amazing. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I just found it really sad, and my main kind of thing I took away from my research was that I want it to be play for exploration, not play for education. And even the toy, the different attachments were like, you painting with different brushes and different colors. So it was kind of like you making this digital sound painting. But obviously, if you can't see the colors, but they still enjoy coloring, they still enjoy moving things. So it's like, how can we like do the same thing for them?
Right. Just for anybody who's listening and who, may have family members or whoever, is there somewhere that we could access this, or is this?
So this toy was a personal project that I did.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to fund me to make it a thing,
please do. I think that's so important.
I don't know which camera to look at, but hit me up. I would love to develop the toy properly. But it was something that I actually did. It was my dissertation project at my final year.
Right, incredible.
Yeah,
we definitely need this, 100%. And I know that you've worked across the creative industry for the past 6 years.
Yeah.
Was there any kind of standout experiences for you? Was there anything that you can comment on as a Black woman in that space, or even just as a woman in that space?
Yeah, so working in the creative industry, also caveat, I work in tech. So because I work in UX and UI and product design, often I'm working in tech companies, or that's been my experience anyway. There's not enough Black women there, let alone any women there.
Right.
So you are often kind of like, the only one in the space and the only one in the room, which is quite sad, I guess, because you're like, that's when a lot of code switching comes, and you're not feeling you can be your authentic self, and you trying to like, work is work, and then I leave it, which is fine. Like I do that all the time, but I feel like it's a little bit different when you feel like you're the only one. You feel kind of like singled out. There definitely needs to be more space for it. And I find like even in that creative tech space, like it's really like around who you know.
Right.
It's really around you networking and who you know and how you can get into certain doors, and pushing yourself, like just like fake it till you make it.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you show up in those spaces? You're saying that there's a lot of code switching on, but how do you still remain as authentic as you can be in those spaces, especially when it's very male dominated?
Yeah.
You're very much kind of pioneering, even if you may not have asked to, you are just by you being you, just by you being the Black woman, you have kind of that responsibility a little bit. So how do you show up as authentically as you can in those spaces?
I feel like my work speaks for itself.
Yeah.
So I tend to show up in the space, and the main thing I learned is confidence is key. Like even if I'm having a bad day, like I'm going to wake up and I'm going to pretend I am like the best person and I know what I'm doing and all of these things, because if you're not confident, people won't take you seriously. Especially like I'm quite young, and like ageism is a thing.
Yeah.
It really is a thing. And I have a young face anyway, like I just have a baby face, so people tend to think I'm younger than I actually am.
You got that melanin magic.
Thank you to our parents. So yeah, like people might not take you seriously, but I feel like if you are authentically yourself in the work that you produce, and you come up to spaces feeling confident and showing that actually I know what I'm talking about and I like take me seriously, then often like that's how you can get the attention of people.
Right, you kind of lead with that, and
yeah,
kind of not demand the respect, but just from you having the confidence in yourself, I guess it follows suit that everybody kind of taps into that energy. It's really important.
Yeah,
I love that. And I know that you're East African.
Yes.
I don't know where exactly from.
Somalia.
Yes. And so how has that ever had any impact on your creativity, or just your experiences? Was there anything you can kind of comment on in that regard?
I'm not really sure about the creativity part. I've always wanted to create a body of work exploring my heritage. And that's all something I was focusing on like pre-COVID, but life happened, things happen, and
COVID was such a
just messed everything up.
It really did, yeah.
But I guess like I also kind of maybe noticed there's not a lot of East Africans in the tech space or anywhere that I'm hanging out. If I'm hanging out in the wrong places, like tell me.
Yeah.
I'll change where I'm going. But yeah, like I just don't find like East Africans in tech spaces, and I'm seeing it more now. Like I also do some teaching sometimes, and I teach like young creative careers, whether they're in university or sixth form. And I see like a lot of young, East Africans and a lot of young Somalis like being in the creative space and trying to take up that space. It makes me so excited.
Yeah.
But in my experience, when I started out, I'm seeing it more now, but it's just kind of like you're not having people you have commonality with. Like earlier I mentioned my like person who was able to mentor me, like he was East African. We literally bonded because we were East African. We were working in the same co-working space. And he was much older than me, but I took a lot of kind of guidance from him. But our literal bondage first was just like, are you East African?
Your heritage.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And like, honestly, knowing him, he's very well connected in the creative industry, has helped me as well. It's like, also make older friends.
Yes.
Make older, like I have a lot of friends who are older than me, and that's just because like I just enjoy people's company. Like I don't mind. But I know a lot of people are like, oh, your friend's like 10 years older than you, or your friend's like 8 years older than me. Like, I personally don't mind. Mm-hmm. But also you learn so much from them, and they're able to like support you in your creative journeys because they've been there and they've done it, and they can give you tips. So like, make all difference.
They've paved the way, and there's so much wisdom that they can bring to you.
Yeah.
And also I think vice versa, just because you're young, it doesn't mean that you don't have any wisdom yourself. Yeah. So there's a nice exchange of information between the two generations, which I think is really important.
Sorry, just go ahead. Actually, I was just thinking about maybe not specifically East African, but I feel like, in a lot of cultures, people are kind of taught like, around empathy and like, like respect, and maybe in like other like in ethnic minority spaces, it's a little bit more prevalent around like respecting your elders and kind of having that like empathy for people. And I feel like the work that I do, because I work in user experience and I work at creating like interfaces, I often need to tap into like, okay, who am I work designing for? Who am I trying to produce this for? And really trying to step into their shoes. Obviously, I will never know, but it's about extending that empathy, speaking to them, being able to understand that. And when I say like, creating magical experiences is really about understanding who your audience is so you can best design and create for them. And I feel like those kind of like little nuggets of, how you've been brought up and things like that. I'm not saying it's exclusively East African.
No.
But
it's played a part, for sure.
Definitely played a part in how I've grown in my career.
Yeah, amazing. And so can you share any words of advice for Black women that want to get into the UX tech design world?
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Please don't come through with a copyright.
No copyright, no copyright.
Just do it. Yeah, like I feel like you just have to like just try. Like, sometimes I get in my head a lot around doing things, and it's like, if I don't get it, I don't get it. If it doesn't succeed, it doesn't succeed, then it wasn't meant for, I very much believe in timing. So I would say like go for it. If that's something that you want to do, like go all and just try it. You can, if you're scared to like, leave your jobs and stuff, I'm not saying that. There's lots of like free courses you can do online and to learn about it, lots of YouTube tutorials, and like just give it a go. And you can pay for courses and stuff like that as well. But there's also a lot of like Black people in tech schemes that you could go for that potentially provide you like mentorship or provide you like subsidized kind of like course fees and things like that. Like there's options if you don't want to like pay for something and having something subsidized. But also like just reach out to people. Like cold emailing works. Like, it
Right.
genuinely works. And for me, it's like, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no, and I'm going to continue on with my life.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Closed mouths don't get fed, as my mum would like to say.
Yeah. And I did that a lot when I first like graduated, but I also do it now a lot. Like, I just message people on LinkedIn, email people, and I'm just like, this is what I do, this is what I'm interested in. Obviously, if I have the experience to maybe go for a job there, then that's how I'll frame the conversation. But sometimes I just email or message people to just have a chat, because I want to know how they got to where they've gone to, because they inspired me.
Right.
And often more times out of 10, people will say yes. People will be like, yeah, I'll have a 20-minute chat with you. Especially now with like the era of Zoom meetings and like
So much more accessible, isn't it?
much more easier than like before. And I'll be like trying to figure out where in London I can have a coffee meeting, and maybe I can't afford this because I don't have enough money. Like, it's not as difficult now. So I would just say go for it, message people and see who you can like learn from.
So build your network, as you touched on earlier, lead with your confidence.
Yeah.
Just don't place any limits on yourself.
Yeah.
And so I know I'd like to get back into kind of like Identity 2.0 and how that all came about.
Yeah.
And so, can you give us an intro into Identity 2.0?
Yeah, of course. So Identity 2.0 is a creative studio, and we work at the intersection of digital rights, identity, technology. So I'm one of the co-founders, and I co-founded it with one of my friends. We met at uni. So it's just us two that have built the studio. We've been going for like 5 years now. And our work really involves around like creating accessible spaces for people to understand like different conversations that are happening in technology, understand what's happening, maybe with their data, maybe what's happening with like AI and all of these kind of like, buzzwords that are happening right now, like creating accessible spaces for people to learn. And we often do that in like creative mediums, because we find that art is really powerful in sparking conversation, and also not removing anybody from the conversation. Art is very accessible. Anybody can access it and be able to have an opinion on it. You don't need to have a law degree to understand an artistic piece, right? So we tend to produce exhibitions, we run creative workshops, we do zines, all around different conversations like maybe surveillance capitalism, or like bias in technology, to digital dehumanization, and getting people to kind of explore and access that space in creative ways.
And you touched on it, and you were saying, kind of like the AI conversation, the data conversation. And so it's addressing the data conversation in a really dynamic way. Can you expand on its mission when we were talking about the data conversation?
Yeah, so when we started Identity 2.0, this was like late 2018. And it was really myself and my co-founder. We kind of like just met for dinner. Like, we were not co-founding nothing. We were just having dinner.
Just an idea at that point.
Yeah, we were just having dinner and watching Gossip Girl. That's literally what we were doing. And we both kind of, it was around the time GDPR was kind of coming into legislation, and we both were working in tech startups, and we had this like frustration of not knowing what's going on. Like, this is my digital identity, this is my data that I'm providing to these platforms. And, when Facebook or Instagram first came out, like, people joined it, but nobody knew what was going on.
It's like when you have your terms and conditions and everybody speeds to the end, nobody reads through it, they tick the box, and we have no idea what we're ticking away.
Yeah, actually. And some of those terms and conditions are mad.
Yeah. What are some of the things that are hidden away that we might be surprised about, that we just sign away?
So, like, for example, the 23andMe kind of thing,
right?
And they have access, like, they have your DNA.
Yeah,
they can do whatever they want with your DNA.
Yeah, that's scary.
They literally can do whatever they want.
This is why I haven't done my ancestry DNA yet.
Yeah, don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't give away your data to those. Your actual like physical data, not just like a picture.
But on the flip side of that, some people might argue, well, I'm so deep into it, they've got my digital footprint from it might be from birth. Like, why not? Why not have my DNA data?
I fundamentally say no.
Right.
Like, to my very core.
Yeah.
I think that argument of just like, of complacency, I felt is just so tired. Like, people feel like we're at the stage where they can't do anything about it, but the internet's only been around for like 35 years.
True. Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
It's not been around for like ever and ever and ever. We are at the stages of like where we can actually create change, but we can't do it. I can't just be like, let's change it, like just me on my own. Like, we actually need collective like voices to be able to create any sort of change, not just in digital privacy, but with anything that's happening in the world, right? So kind of this conversation of like, I don't care. I'm like, but you should care. You should care. You should care what happens to your digital identity. You should care what happens to your footprint. You should care what large corporations are going to do with your data. Like, for example, OpenAI, they are the producers of ChatGPT, DALL-E, all these other models. They originally had a clause in their like company values, whatever, saying that they won't work with military.
Interesting. Okay, did they give the reason for that?
This was like kind of like one of their like values and like principles kind of thing. They then removed that clause and then a few days later announced they're working with the US military.
Wow, just a few days later.
So I'm just thinking, why do you trust your data in the hands of these big corporations that don't care about you? Like, why do you not care what you're giving away? You should. And we're at a point where we can actually change the course of it. Is right now, it's like not Five Guys, but as I say, like Five Guys in Silicon Valley making decisions. But
it does seem that way though.
Yeah,
honestly. I was having a conversation earlier about digital colonization, and these big conglomerates, they really have the stronghold over what we're doing with data, and it's kind of reminiscent of like a more physical colonization. And you're saying now that okay, we're 35 years in and we have a chance to really make some changes here. So this is kind of taps into exactly what you're saying about these silicone guys and just the stronghold that they have over it.
Yeah, and you've seen pockets of it, like you've seen pockets of resistance. Like for example, when WhatsApp and changed their privacy policy, and I think it was like 2 years ago or something, there was a huge migration from WhatsApp. Like loads of people tried to leave WhatsApp and use Telegram and use Signal and use like more of these kind of like services that, you know, are true to their encryption words and have like better privacy policies. So you saw like a huge change of that happening. When the algorithms, when the the A-level algorithm grading happened in 2020, you saw like loads of teenagers go to the streets and like refuse it and say, you know, an algorithm doesn't know me, doesn't know my grade. So you see like lots of pockets of resistance happening. And I feel like inherently people know this is not okay, but feel like the conversation around tech and how it's been developed, it's really interesting to me because one, there's lots of dark design patterns. And like what I mean by dark design pattern is like, oh, having the terms and conditions is a little tick.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Very discreet.
This is very, very discreet. It's just like, oh, you just need to do this one little thing for us. Just this one small thing. And then
just
you
sign your life away.
Then you can access. Like, that's a dark design pattern. You don't know what that information is, right? Or making it so long and jargon filled and so like in the space of like using loads of law terms that people, an average person won't understand it. So their instinct is to scroll past it and click it, right? So that's one thing of people feeling like, oh, I can't access this. But also the way people talk about it and the way like all of these kind of, you know, tech bros talk about it, all the acronyms in tech, like it makes people feel stupid. Like it makes people feel like, oh, I don't know what's going on here. I can't join this conversation. I can't advocate for anything here because I don't understand it. And I don't want to get involved because I don't want to feel stupid or I don't want to like, you know, say the wrong thing. So people then take a step back away from it. And it's all kind of designed that way.
Purposeful, isn't it?
It's very purposeful.
Yeah.
It's quite sinister.
It's very sinister. And I think we need maybe perhaps some education around this.
100%.
I keep going back to, you know, media literacy, educating children in schools. Like this is what you need to look out for, and data really needs to be part of that education.
100%. I completely agree.
Absolutely. It's kind of scary actually when you think about it. Because I will admit I've definitely been one of those people where I'm just like, yeah, guess goes to the bottom.
Everybody has. Even I have. Like I can't just sit here and be like, I have read terms and conditions and I have read privacy policies in the past before, but like I'm not going to sit here and be like, I do that all the time.
Right.
Like it's difficult to do that, right? It's also a very lengthy process. Like if you were to read terms and conditions, it could take you hours.
But also, what if you're like, I read the terms and conditions, I don't accept them, but then you can't go forward and you can't access it, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah. So this was something also that frustrated us in the need of like creating Identity 2.0 is we were feeling frustrated that we, you know, didn't understand what was happening, and we felt like, you know, we should understand it. This is this is something that everybody should talk about. And reading GDPR, like, this is a really great piece of legislation, and everybody just really associates it to just like getting an email and being like, oh, can we still email you our newsletter? And the first step to creating identity entrepreneurs, figuring out a future manifesto of like, what are the ways we want our data to be treated in the future? When we started Identity Entrepreneur, we were very much looking at how we exist on platforms, our digital privacy, our digital identities, and really surveillance capitalism in the way that it is, right? We've since grown, and we talk about other topics now in technology and different things of how our relationships are with technology. But we first started in that space. And one of the things we spoke about is like, the right to choose. Like, you should be able to read a piece of terms and conditions and be like, I accept to this, but I don't accept to this. I accept to this, I don't accept to this. And still be able to access the platform, because like a lot of digital platforms like Twitter and X, I made that mistake. I was like, oops, sorry. Instagram, Facebook, like these places are like, I'm not gonna say town halls, but kind of like similar to what it was back in, back before the internet, where people would come into their local town, be able to catch up with people, talk to people and things like that. You're seeing all of that now on online platforms. So not being able to access that really like removes you from pop culture, removes you from, community, yeah, which is quite unfair. So you should have the right to choose.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you've just said. And it's really frustrating that we don't, and be able to kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not arrange it, but opt and mold it into how we'd want to access it and experience it. And so I know that hyper invisibility of Blackness body of work is really interesting in regards to the data conversation and Blackness. And so what is the important takeaway you want Black people and people in general to understand about that piece of work? Can you explain what it was? And
Yes. So the hyper invisibility of Blackness is an interactive timeline that you can find on our website. And it was actually a body of work that we had in our exhibition called This Machine is Black. And This Machine is Black explored the relationship between race and technology. We had 4 themes in this exhibition: deepfake, surveillance and privacy, Afrofuturism, and abolition. And that timeline was in the surveillance and privacy. So it explores kind of like how technology perpetuates biases that we already have, like human biases. Like, we teach machines, AI systems aren't it. I don't want to use pronouns to explain AI systems, because often you hear people say, oh, the AI, it's like they are thinking this, and
it's not they're humanizing it almost.
They're humanizing, right? Yeah, which is, I think, is like, quite dangerous. So I think it's also, people tend to look at AI systems and machines as like unbiased and being like, oh, if the machine said it, then it must be right. Whilst the surveillance privacy piece theme of the exhibition looked at like, how has biases inherently been in our data sets because of our history, and how is that now perpetuated online? So like looking at like, facial recognition doesn't recognize Black faces as well, because it's not trained on Black faces, it's trained on white faces. And sometimes even mistakes Black people. So not only can it not detect us, it will also not see us or mistake us and think like I'm you or you're me, or things like that, right? Because it's not trained on our features. And most recently, last year, an article came out saying that driverless cars, like automated cars, can't detect darker skinned people or disabled people. It doesn't recognize a wheelchair and doesn't recognize Black or brown people. So it will just continue driving because it's like, it is trained on white, able-bodied people, right? You've seen things like, Google, like tagging Black women as like gorillas or monkeys. Like, it's not that the system is racist or things like that. It's like there's biases that are implemented into AI systems and algorithms that are then perpetuated and just automated. All it is our biases automated. And it really is looking at, okay, what is the training data that we're using? And often large amounts of training data is things that we already have, and that is seated in like misogyny and seated in racism and
ableism, ageism, and all the isms. Yeah,
all the isms, right? Yeah. So what that timeline is kind of supposed to do is, one, highlight that. But what I would want Black people take away in general is kind of like, AI systems can only have the capacity of what the engineers have taught it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it only has the capacity of what data set it has. It's not like right. It's not something you should look for and be like, oh, if it's done this, then it must be correct.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really examine your relationship when you're using automated tools, because it wasn't designed for us.
Right. And the conversation about representation is really important here, because people like you, we're going to need you guys like on our side and being in these spaces and building into these tools and these AI tools so that these things don't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already seeing it in kind of like medical books. We don't see black skin. You know, I think somebody drew a black fetus for the first time, or on a black pregnant woman, and I'd never seen that.
Yeah.
Even something as simple as black band-aids, black hot plasters. It's just we're just not thought about in that sense.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, because we're so early on in this journey, 35 years in, we really have space to change.
100%.
So again, you're doing like remarkable work in changing this and highlighting it, which is so important.
Yeah.
This is great. So yes, keep on.
Thank you very much.
Is there kind of anything else that you're working on, or similar to hyper invisibility body of work that you want to kind of highlight as important in this conversation?
Maybe not something directly related to race and technology. I definitely, both me and my co-founder definitely want to expand This Machine is Black. The exhibition ran in 2021, and we definitely want to be able, and it was launched in Leicester. We definitely want to be able to grow that body of work and like have it shown in more places, because some of the topics are still relevant, some might need updating, and some just need to just like be grown on it. But most recently, we produced an exhibition that was for Stop Killer Robots, and they are an NGO, global coalition that are campaigning to, you know, stop the use of autonomous weapons. And when I say autonomous weapons, it's basically robots that use sensor data that can then decide you are a threat, I must kill you.
Wow, that exists?
That exists, yeah.
Okay, please expand more, because I had no idea.
Yeah, that exists, and it is being built by militaries.
Right.
So very much you hear the conversation of like, oh, we need to build it to protect ourselves and all of these things, and it's very, very like, you know, like a very just...
It's a dark path.
Very dark path, but they do exist and they are happening. And it's very much like this NGO is doing great work around like raising awareness about it, one. But two, also, you know, trying to create regulation around it and trying to stop it. They work a lot with the UN and stuff like that. But it currently is being used in Russia, and it's currently being used in Israel.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
With the Palestinian conflict. Wow. Right.
So it is being like, these things are automated drones, for example, sensing people, deciding where to put bombs, things like that. They do exist. So we worked with them to produce an exhibition that looked at digital dehumanization. It was called Automated by Design. It was launched last year in New York in October. And it explored, you know, the concept of digital dehumanization, where we are so dehumanized by data that, you know, a machine could choose whether we live or die, which obviously is not something that we ever want. It's not something that's happening like, you know, outside of our front doorsteps, but it doesn't mean it's not happening elsewhere.
Or that it couldn't happen.
Or that it couldn't happen, right? So and also, it's not a future problem. It's a now problem, because we need to stop it now so it doesn't happen in the future.
Right.
So it's also something to like raise awareness. Be like, oh, it's so like, that's so dystopian. I'm like, but people are building it, so we should stop them now, so then it doesn't become dystopian. Like, we have the access to do it now. So yeah, we did that exhibition, and we recently launched a like digital version of it online, and it's on, I think, Stop Killer Robots website, but it was also in partnership with Amnesty International and Sakugakai International, which is based in Tokyo. And I think that's just like a really interesting body of work. It took us over a year to build, and really explores, you know, digital dehumanization around like maybe facial recognition in healthcare and education. And obviously it does talk about autonomous weapons, but we look at that, that's the end of the spectrum. Like, we don't want to get there, but that's like the way that we can be dehumanized completely towards the end of the spectrum. But there's still ways we are being dehumanized now, and exploring that. So yeah, I think that's like a piece of work that we finally can talk about, because it's been launched. And yeah, I think like people should follow groups like Stop Killer Robots and explore that body of work for sure.
Yeah. So that's one of the more interesting ones. But has there been anything that's been particularly challenging? Anything where you felt like, God, this is really heavy, or just any?
That project was
It was, yeah. Can imagine.
It was quite heavy. Like we had to learn a lot around like the research around autonomous weapons and like what's happening currently. It was like, it was quite a lot to take in. Obviously, like it was a long piece of work to produce, because it wasn't a studio based project of like me and my co-founder building it and stuff like that. It was for a client of ours, so it took a lot more kind of like planning and like more check-ins and like more people involved and figuring out this. Once this is supposed to be a traveling exhibition, so it got launched in New York, but it's due to go on tour sometime this year. So it's like, okay, how does the logistics of that? So it was quite interesting project. Like I enjoyed doing the project, but it was quite heavy. And even things like, this machine is black, like doing the research is quite heavy. Like you sometimes forget about, the not nice parts of tech. So learning about that, sometimes you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Not the nice parts of tech or data. Yeah. It's just, I mean, you've said a couple of things that shocked me today. Honestly, I think I need to take it a little bit more seriously. Yeah, definitely. And so where would you like to scale Identity 2.0?
Yeah, so we've been going for 5 years now. And I think for us, it's kind of like being able to produce more bodies of work, like me being able to produce more exhibitions. We've done 3 exhibitions to this date. 4 included automated by design. 3 was studio based, and they all kind of explored different things. The first 2 very much explored surveillance capitalism. Then this machine is black explored, race technology, automated by design. Explored digital dehumanization. But there's also like other parts of tech that we want to talk about, maybe exploring like around generative AI and raising awareness and highlighting things that's happening in that space. And also producing fun things. Like we produced a zine at the end of 2020, which was like, this is a mess. Our whole lives are online right now. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And it was literally called The Messy Issue. So
I like that.
like producing more zines and exploring like love and online dating and things like that. And there's lots of spaces that we could go into, and I think there's lots of potential for us to create work around. And both my co-founder and I, we both work separately as well, and then we work on Identity 2.0 at the same time. So finding the time for that to let it grow sometimes can be difficult.
It sounds like you've got a nice balance though between some of the heavier stuff that you're working on, but also not forgetting that we do still live in a nice world if we want to view it that way. And so you're bringing in creating some of those experiences, like you said at the beginning, to create magic.
Yeah, we run workshops around like tech utopia, speculative design, getting people to really co-create and imagine with us, what do you want to see in the future? Like, how can we develop? How can we create our own paths? And stuff like that. Like, we use memes a lot to get messages across, and we have our tone of voice is very humorous, because if you can make somebody laugh, then you've done a great job and people be engaged with the work that you're doing. So it's very much finding that balance of, creating accessibility. And even when we create work that are maybe the heavier topics, we don't want to talk about it in a way that puts people off. We want that art to be accessible. We want the conversation to still be accessible to people.
Yeah, accessible and interesting, so that it's really, the message is really absorbed properly. Yeah. Absolutely. So I guess we're at this stage where I'd like to ask my guests about their values. Yeah. And so I'd like to ask you a value for your professional life and a value for your personal life.
Okay. I think I'll start with my professional life. Yeah, we've been talking about that for now. With my professional life, I think values around definitely confidence, exuding that confidence, pushing, making yourself feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's hard, especially when you're in a job and you're comfortable, you're happy, you're in an easy space, but you're not really being challenged. Right. Sometimes it's difficult to be I want to leave this really nice comfy space I'm in that's paying me well to go be challenged. But that's the only way you will actually grow. So reminding myself, go out there, be confident, just try things. Often And my friends and my co-founder as well, like, really helped me in this. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know if I should do this. Like, you know, when you get that, like, imposter syndrome, and you're not feeling like you'll get something, is, you know, when you're closest around you, or like, you should just go for it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? You won't get it, and then you can try again. So kind of like being not afraid, like not being afraid of no is one thing. Having confidence and being comfortable with the uncomfortable.
You touched on imposter syndrome there, and I know as women we tend to have that a lot more. And so it's just making sure that we know that we should fill up the space. The table is there for us, or we build our own tables.
Yeah, of course. And I think sometimes it takes you a while to realize, oh, I was being stupid.
Right, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's just like, oh, I shouldn't have worried about this too much. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I've done projects where actually it was a sick project. I can say that now. It was a great project. It was a great outcome. Like, I'm really happy with it. But at the time, I wasn't. Like, at the time, I think maybe I expected more from myself. And that's like also somewhere you get imposter syndrome, when you expect so much and then you don't reach it. You're like, oh, but then I'm not good enough. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You the doubt. It's very much the fear, the doubt, the storytelling.
Yeah. And it's also like when other people tell you it's good, believe them.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Just believe them. Accept the flowers. Like, obviously, the people that you're inviting to look at your work, explore your work, or you value their opinion of, are not going to lie to you. Right? They're not going to tell you it's amazing if it's good. They'll just be like, it's good. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, to believe them, like, accept it and check yourself. Because I often, like, sometimes don't think something is good until afterwards. And then I'm like, oh, I should have celebrated that more, because that was actually really good.
Giving yourself grace a little bit. Yeah. Okay. And so for your personal life?
For my first personal life, definitely rest, I would say. Like, I do so much sometimes that, like, rest is not the top of my mind, but I am very much against this grind, wake up at 5 a.m. Like,
yeah, I'm with you.
I've had arguments with people in workplaces because they're like, oh yeah, you need to do this, you need to be on the grind, you need to, why?
We've got the same 24 hours. Like, how you utilize it is up to you. Yeah, exactly. Why?
Fine.
So, right.
I'm very much against that. But sometimes when you're really deep in projects and you're so busy, it's hard to make time for rest. So, like, really giving myself that space and creating space for myself where, like, I can, like, recoup, I can rest, I can do these things. And also another value is trying new things. Like, sometimes I forget to do that, but, like, you don't need to always do this. Obviously, you have your hobbies, but you don't always need to do the same hobbies all the time. I feel like you can just try to explore something. Like, once I signed up to a circus school.
I love that. Okay. Yeah.
Because this is really funny. I just basically saw this, like, poster around, like, aerial hoop and aerial stuff. And I was just like, I'm going to try this. And I signed up to a 6-week program to circus school. And I learned different things. But now, like, in my if I have the time, I won't say I'll do this regularly, but now I know, actually, I don't really like doing silks, but I really enjoy doing aerial hoop. So if I get some time and I can go to a class, then I know, like, actually, I really enjoy this and I can do it. But if I didn't sign up to a circus school, I would have never known.
Right. It's that you sound like you have a bit of an adventurous spirit. Just ready to try anything. And
I do. Like, I like trying new things and seeing if I like it. And if I hate it, at least I know. But again, when you're busy and you're busy with work, you want to, like, do your work, see your close friends, see your loved ones, see your family, sleep, rest, and that's it. You don't make time to, like, try new things. So I feel like a value, especially for me coming into 2024, is some of those things had slipped for me. So I really want to bring that back into my lifestyle and being like, let me just be spontaneous.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I hope that's kind of given people listening today a little bit of a push to try something different this year.
Yeah, do it.
Arda, we've come to the end of our conversation. It's sped by, but it's been so enjoyable. If people want to follow your journey and Identity 2.0's journey, how can they do that?
Yeah, so for Identity 2.0, you can find us on Instagram at identity2_o, and that's basically on all of the platforms. And then it's identity20.org. And if you want to follow my work, it's ardaawais.com. My Instagram's for my friends. I don't have no public Instagram.
That's closed.
I like just sharing my coffees and my selfies with my friends. So yeah, you can't really follow me on Instagram. No. But I do have Twitter.
I like the boundaries. I like you putting your boundaries down.
Yeah. So maybe if I create a public Instagram one day, then you can follow my work there. But yeah, my website will update most of my work. My LinkedIn is just my name, and I have Twitter, which is also just my name.
Brilliant. Well, thank you again. And guys, if you do want to continue with following the Black Circle's journey, you can find us on YouTube at the Black Circle Podcast, and also on Instagram at the Black Circle .podcast. And that's it for another episode. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.